Awesome. Hey everyone, my name is Sam. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the Member Experience Manager at Advent Coworking. I'm so excited to have you joining us today for our weekly event, Advent Member Talks. Each week features a different member on the topic of their choosing. And it's a really great opportunity for members to be able to skill share, not only with other Advent members, but with the greater Charlotte community. And we get to promote our members, which we really love doing. And I'm so excited today that we are being joined by Ohavia Phillips, who I'm sure many of you know from our FF Level Up event, as well as our 5-year anniversary party. She is a lovely human being. So I'm really excited that Ohavia is giving our talk today and is going to be talking to us about how you can use your social media for advocacy work. So if you have any questions for Ohavia throughout the talk, please just comment those on this video, and then we'll have a short Q&A at the end. All right, Ohavia, I'll hand it over to you.
Yes, thanks so much, Sam. So first things first, I want to shout out Sam. Absolutely adore you. Also, shout out to my Advent co-working family. I'm literally reporting live from the coolest space, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So shout out to my Advent co-working family. I'm just so appreciative. Thank you so much. And thank you all for watching and joining. I don't take it lightly. You could be doing anything with your time in this current space, but you are here and you're rocking with me, and I'm just so grateful. So today, y'all, I'm not going to lie. We are going to talk about my favorite topic. And I love talking about a lot of things. I like to talk and I love people in general, but this right here just makes my heart skip a beat out of my chest, okay? So today we're gonna talk about social media and activism, social media and advocacy work, and social media and the pull-up. So really quick, I use this colloquialism a lot because it's my favorite, but whenever I mention pull-up, I wanted to let people know kind of where it came from. So whenever I use it, you can understand the intentionality behind it. So when I say using social media as activism and advocacy work to pull up, basically all I'm saying is to advocate for. So at the 51st annual NAACP Awards, the beautiful Rihanna, she kind of dubbed this term and brought it back to light for us. So what it means to pull up is basically to advocate for Black people, for brown people, for women, for LGBTQIA, okay, for racial injustice, for systemic brutalities. And when I say systemic brutalities, let's talk real for a second, friends. So this is systemic brutalities in our education. So what textbooks, what literary works are our children, our next generation learning from, right? Are they old textbooks? Are they outdated? So that's what I talk about when I say systemic brutalities. Another example of this is workplace. So lack of equal opportunity, the wage gap between men and women, and representation on boards. Listen, we'll be here all day, but when I say pull up, that's basically the advocacy for things that you're passionate about. And basically you are giving your true authentic self to a cause where we can all make it better for everybody else. Okay, so let's get to it. All right, so I'm a researcher at heart. And when we talk social media and activism, literally I've dedicated my entire study, and I still am, to this because what I loved is the power of social media, right? And when we use it intentionally and when we really lean on how we can use it to not only impact our communities, but also leave positive effects for change for the next generation to accomplish. So when we discuss the role of social media and activism, there are 3 things that come to mind for me, friends. And the first thing is it's very precise, right? So when we discuss social media and activism, it's precise in the impact on movements. And we've seen that with protests with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. We've seen that all across the world. We're even currently seeing it following the siege on the US Capitol. So we know that social media is very precise in how it shows the impact on movements, but also the hereafter after the initial link up, right? The second thing is it creates the development and spread of information in real time. So we're able to go live and we're able to see our city leaders and we're able to see ourselves in a lot of these spaces, which is very important when we talk about pulling up and advocating for our communities, because people want to see, how do you show up in real time? The third thing is social media is pivotal in mobilization efforts. So if you want to get a think tank together, if you want to get a lot of creatives together, if you want to pull people from different corners of the community together to really hone in on this one disparity and change it, we can do that with the power of social media. Okay, so the first thing is it's very precise. The second is it's vocal, right? So we're seeing a rise in advocates and activists, which is awesome. We're also seeing a rise in the effort to propose solutions straight from the community. And this can look like a lot like the Advent member talk. So talking to one another about things that we're seeing in our communities, things that we're lacking. How can we bridge the gap in disparity, but also in the change, right? And another thing that we see is movements are geared toward developing, sustaining, and sharing collective thoughts and ideas. So what does this look like? It's bringing all four corners of a community together to work together for a common good, right? And another thing that I really love about social media and activism is it's a takeover. It's a takeover. And we're seeing an emergence of digital networking communities. We're seeing an emergence of memberships and collective thoughts coming together all through our social media apps, right? So this is through our Facebook, this is on Instagram, even on Clubhouse, which is the newest one. And if you're not on Clubhouse, because, you know, I know that there's some disparities there with like Android versus iPhone users, but you can still get access to that content if invited in. We're seeing that there's this awesome emergence of thought and people who feel the same way about things and who want to come together to discuss many of these things. And so I like to call that the social media takeover, right? But where we're also seeing that is on two ends. So on one, we've seen it in the negative, right? And we've seen it in real time just as early as last week with the siege on the US Capitol, how people were able to leverage social media to get people together, to also go live. And we saw in real time what was happening, even possibly, I like to say, before the news cameras got there, right? But then we also see in the positives with support, where communities come together to march, where brothers and sisters join in arms for one common goal. So one thing about our communities is when giving the power and the intentionality of social media, we can definitely make a lot of change happen. We just have to know the power of pretty much what's on our phones and what's in our hands, right? So friends, here's the truth. The truth is that we are absolutely in a digital deluge, okay? We are getting a flood of megapixels and codes and headlines, and we're even given pieces of media to dissect on a daily basis, which causes us to move from educating ourselves sometimes to inundating ourselves and a lot of our emotions, right? So simply put, there's a lot going on in social media, and that is no surprise, right? So some days we take in content that is inspiring and it's beautiful and we love it and we want to see more of it. Some days, let's be real, it's very overwhelming. And then some days we don't know what's going on. Some days we're like, where do I go from here? What do I do with this media? Do I share it? Do I repost it? It's too much. And let me tell you something, friends, that is absolutely okay. But the question that I have in the midst of all of these things, right? When we talk the digital overflow, when we talk the content that we take in, when we talk the media we take in, the question that I have for you all is, did you get that on camera? Did you get it on camera? Okay. So in the grand scheme of things, with everything going on in the world, pulling out your phone during a high intensity, highly emotional, frustrating, high impact environment is frowned upon. And if there's anybody that should know, it's me. So I worked in news for 4 years, and I was blessed with the opportunity to cover many awesome headlines here in the city of Charlotte and beyond. And I remember pulling up to a lot of headlines with my cell phone. And I remember people telling me, how insensitive are you? Right? Or they would say things like, oh, Havia, are you serious? Like, this is a story. Like, why do you have your phone in your hand? And for some people, they would even tell me, like, don't you have something more important to do? What role does your phone play in this? And literally, this awesome device has stirred up a lot of trouble, ironically, right? So what I had to realize, though, early in my news career, and even after quitting and still serving my community in advocacy work and activism and bridging the gaps between media and the conversations that we need to have, is that even though my phone is very small, it stirs up a lot, but I had to realize that's activism, right? It is activism when we're able to pull up to certain things and get it in real time for the world to see. So it's no surprise that social media is a powerful tool, my friends, but when you use it intentionally, it can expose inconsistencies, it puts a dent in disparities, and we get the opportunity to call out a lot of our leaders who are or are not working for us. Simply put, our phones and our social media is very powerful to activism work, right? So I realized this back in my news days, and I realized that I had the opportunity to cover many headlines right from my phone. And to be honest with you all, this love of activism, this love of advocacy work started back in 2016 following the shooting death of Keith Lamont Scott. So I was blessed with the opportunity to cover all of the protests. And the reason why I use the word blessed is because it exposed me to the true nature of not only a lot of our communities, but also the powers that be and the people in authority, right? So it allowed me to just watch and listen and hear from communities. So I remember I watched as my colleagues rushed to grab their equipment and they ran to the story, but I grabbed my phone, right? I watched as we all rushed to different locations to get different angles of the story, but I grabbed my iPhone. And I watched how all of my colleagues were running to different interviews and all these things. And I asked my boss, I'll never forget, friends, I asked my boss if I could go to the street. I said, is it okay with you if I just go to my communities? Can I go to the protests? I would like to sit in the middle of it and see it all going on, because this is what the world needs to see, right? So the reason why I kept mentioning that I brought my iPhone and my colleagues bought their camera equipment is because literally we're seeing the power in less heaviness, but more impact, right? We're seeing the power of how going live and in real time taking pictures and posting it can have an effect on our communities and also how they're receiving that content. So now that I kind of broke down my passion and why it really is for digital media, social media, and activism, here are some ways that you too can use your social media apps, your platforms. And when I say platforms, it's not just numbers, friends. It's literally how you leverage the application to impact your communities, right? So I'm going to give you all some ways that has worked for me, that continues to work for me, with how you can use your awesome device or your favorite apps to show up in your community and basically pull up on your city leaders so that they can advocate for you. And let's get to this true change that we need. So using the acronym CAMERA, because I'm just really extra, I figured why not use the word camera, did you get that on camera, to kind of give strategy as to how we can leverage social media apps and also our cell phones to show up in communities. So the C stands for call them out or call them in. Simply put, what this means is use all of your social media, use your applications, use your cell phone to expose leaders who are doing an amazing job in your city. Also, the reason why this is important is sometimes we get lost in the shuffle, right? So leaders make promises, and it's always important to go back and see, did they keep that promise? And what I love about using your social media apps and your phone to basically educate the community is you're telling the community, hey, this leader is doing a fantastic job. Or, hey, here are some ways that we can press our leaders a little bit more so we can get what we truly want. What I also love about the C is we're calling people out, but also we're calling people in. So what this affords us to do is using our platforms to bring everybody together so that we can create safe spaces to have the very awkward and tough conversations. Because how do we really make change if we can't have those tough conversations, right? The A stands for accountability. And look, friends, it's no surprise, we need a whole lot more of this in 2021. Okay, so the essence of using your social media for advocacy work and also activism is to hold important people accountable. Hold people accountable for what they said they would do for you in your community, for what they would do for you in your schools, for that disparity that really bothers you and you work toward it. Hold those people accountable that made you those promises. Listen, at the end of the day, it's important to note that a lot of the leaders in our city, they don't work for this, they work for us, right? So it's not so much so that they're working for the promise, they're working to fulfill the promise. So it's important as a community that we come together to hold that promise and those city leaders who made that promise accountable. The M stands for mindfulness, but my favorite about the M is turning the moment on your phone into a movement in your community. Listen, friends, at the end of the day, I love my phone. A lot of the pull-ups that I do are literally off of my phone when I go live and I discuss different topics about how we can serve our communities better. But what I love is after I get off of live, right? Or in your case, after you watch a live, what are some ways that you can actually be inspired to pull up for that issue in your community, right? And what I also love about the M is it affords us the ability to be mindful. I know you all saw this a lot with the George Floyd things that were happening, with the Breonna Taylor protests and demonstrations that were happening. Literally, the past 8 months before 2021 was pivotal. We saw how a lot of people stepped up to be leaders. We saw how more leaders stepped up to be better leaders. And even on the negative side, we've seen how some leaders kind of faded to black, right? We've seen how a lot of leaders didn't want to discuss that. We've seen how a lot of small business owners and all the things, either they stepped up and faced what was happening, or they stepped back because either they didn't know or they didn't know how to craft a message that was proper and acceptable, right? So it's important that when you use your phone or your social media app to make sure that you're mindful about the content that you're putting out. Because even though you're putting that content out, there's somebody taking it in. Or maybe in your case, you're the one taking that content in, but do your research, right? Make sure that what you're taking in is factual. Make sure that what you're taking in is real before you repost, because that's how a lot of what we saw in the US Capitol can happen is, was there anybody fact checking? Was there anybody who questioned the powers that be? Was there anybody who thought, well, this might not have been smart, right? And at the end of the day, when emotions fade, it's important to have a strategy to not only carry out how we can engage with communities, but create safe spaces so we can have the awkward and tough conversations, right? So that's the N. And the E stands for education, which is my personal favorite. And let me be clear. Education is not going back to school and getting a master's or a PhD. Listen, I'm all for it. Go education. But when I talk education, we're literally leaning more toward educating yourself, and it's unlearning to learn again. So once again, I will always go back to what I've covered, from the Keith Lamont Scott shooting all the way to when I was out there protesting, all of the things that were happening back in 2020. One thing that I've seen is within conversations is a lot of people have to unlearn things, right? So imagine somebody lives their whole life with certain experiences and they've held on to those things. And here are a lot of these situations, these police brutality situations, the social injustice situations happening, and they don't know how to handle it. Now, I'm not using that as an excuse, but what we have to remember to do, friends, is to leave that grace in that space, leave that leading with love, to allow people to unlearn what they've held on to for so long, right? And again, the reason why we're leaving this space is not for them to make an excuse of it, but more so to help them remember, listen, your perspective is flawed. What you held on to isn't right. And this is not how we community build. This is how we community break. So the reason why we have to remember education with social media apps and platforms in our phones is every time you take in content or you create it, make sure that you're leaving room for people to not only be educated, but also a question and answer where we can show it for each other and create more safe space. The R stands for, we got to remember, listen, friends, I know we're in 2021. And it's a brand new you, and it's a brand new me. Well, I'm pretty much the same, but I know we're in 2021 and we have all of these amazing goals and all of these amazing things happening, but we have to remember all of the things that we saw. And here is why. We have to remember where we came from, and we have to ask ourselves, are there improvements, right? So when a lot of those protest demonstrations were happening, a lot of the times when we saw city leaders pull up and everybody was on a megaphone and people were rah-rahing and, you know, there was a lot of hype around it, it was easy to do that because there was hype. Now that we're seeing that things are quieting down, and now that we're seeing a transition with the powers that be, and we're seeing transitions with our communities, ask yourselves, do I still see those city leaders? Do I still see those community servants? Do I still see all of those promises that they said that they would do? Is that happening? And the reason why we want to remember, again, using our social media apps and our cell phones, is because we got to hold people accountable. It goes back to the A. We have to remember what was told. And now that it's months down the line, how are we doing, right? And the last A stands for advocate, which is my personal favorite. Friends, I cannot express to you enough. One thing that I absolutely adore about the city of Charlotte and living here is I get to pull up in my community every single day. So what makes my heart skip a beat is media. So every time I create content, it is solely and only with the intent to educate and not enrage. It's solely and only with the intent for us to come together and have the tough conversations and not make anybody feel uncomfortable. Because if there's something that I learned from 2016 to 2021, it's that people want to ask hard questions, they just don't know where to start. So will you be that person, right? Will you be that safe space? And also, will you allow yourself to answer them candidly, to have real talk? Because that's important too. Again, it's not about babysitting the injustice or babysitting the excuse to continue it, but more so we have to remember that we got to leave that space to allow people to feel these new feelings so that we can really make impact in our communities, okay? So listen, friends, we did the camera method. We're calling people out and we're calling them in. We're holding people accountable. We're being mindful. We're educating people. We're remembering where we came from, but also where we're supposed to go. And simply put, we're advocating. So I'm going to leave you with this, and I'm going to turn it back over to Sam. At the end of the day, understand that there are two kinds of people when we discuss social media and the power of our phones. There are people who produce content, and there are people who consume content. Now, also understand that one role doesn't demean the other. But if you find that you are one that produces content, ask yourself, okay, am I being a good steward over my content? Am I enraging communities, or do I want to educate them, right? Am I leaving safe space for people to understand and ask me questions, or am I just always pulling up with like really low vibration? And at the end of the day, friends, if you are a consumer, ask yourself, is this healthy content to take in? What am I learning? How can I research? How can I dig deeper? Because there is really no new subject under the sun. It's just us deciding if we're going to research to not only know for ourselves, but unlearn for a lot of our flawed perspectives, okay? So I am Ohavia Phillips. This was my Advent member talk. Thank you so much to my Advent family. This was awesome. And look, you can catch me pulling up in my communities and advocating, and I'm so thankful for y'all. Thank you. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Ohavia. This has been such great information, and just talking about media is so important, and just the power that we as just individuals, it's not, you know, I mean, you're a professional media person, but, you know, those of us who are not, like, our ability to also capture moments and to, you know, story tell. And I really love that that mindfulness of, you know, not just capturing the like moment on your phone, but also like creating a movement, giving it that context where it's like, you're not just seeing folks yelling or saying things, you're having that bigger understanding and the responsibility of folks who are capturing that to, you know, give that context. I love that.
Yes, Sam. And I love that too. It is a responsibility. And that's the only thing that I always call for our communities to remember, especially content creators, is, yeah, I know you're creating it, but remember, somebody on the other end is receiving, and what are you sowing into that person? You know, so it's a heavy weight, and it's definitely one that you should be responsible with. Yeah. So, yeah.
So we have a few questions here.
Okay.
Thank you, Kyle, for joining us today. Oh, and we have Charlotte here.
Hey, Charlotte!
Questions. All right, so how can we better advocate while staying within brand as an entrepreneur?
Yes, this is my favorite question. So the truth is that at the end of the day, you have a business to run, which is respectable. And at the end of the day, you do have a brand to run. But what we are asking, and when I say we, it's people who are boots on the ground, grassroots, is we're asking for allyship. And allyship takes on different forms. So when we talk business and brand, look, we're not asking for you to break social media aesthetic, and we're not asking you to do something that you normally don't do. But what we are asking for is acknowledgement. And what I was seeing, Sam, when I was at a lot of those protests, and even I've been blessed with the opportunity to talk to a lot of businesses about DE&I from doing the grassroots work, is they were like, oh, hey, I didn't know what to do. I was like, what's crazy is all you had to do was something. And say something, right? What we're looking for is the acknowledgement. And this can come off in different ways. So talking brand to this specific question, if it is on social media, it's, hey, listen, we see and we hear, we are here for you. Do you understand the impact that that would have? Hey, we see, we hear, and we would like to, you know, go live if y'all would like Q&A, or we would like to pull in community leaders who would like to partner with us. And the reason why I'm using this certain lingo, partnership, allyship, is because that's what really makes us get over the hurdle of a lot of what we're seeing. So how you can show up is in your own authentic way, decide amongst your team how you want to show up on social media. So, hey, we got to say something. How can we acknowledge this that aligns with our brand? And it's small things like color schemes that you can follow. Follow the color schemes for your business or your brand. It's small things like if you're a TikToker, right? What I loved is we saw people using TikTok to also advocate. So they was doing the, you know, classy bougie ratchet challenges. And they were saying like, and you saw like little pop-ups of words like, this is wrong. This is a distraction. Let me show you how. Pull up. So it's different ways that you can get creative and still not be off brand. But literally the answer, friend, is just acknowledge that you see. Because the worst thing that you can do is say nothing. Silence is compliance. So I hope
Absolutely. Yes, compliance. Yeah. And I love that you got also into kind of that business responsibility, because we have this other question, you know, what is the responsibility of businesses to advocate for their communities? Yeah. And I'm going to tweak that a little and just specify and say like businesses that they're not related to like social justice work or, you know, advocacy work whatsoever.
Yes.
How do they, yeah.
Absolutely. And so this ties back to a lot of the work I was doing with D&I. And I mean, from breweries to like boutiques, once again, blessed to work with a lot of people here in the city. And that's that. First of all, let's be real here. If your brand or your small business is not tied to that work, it's like, okay, how do we do this, right? And so once again, there are creative, intentional, and authentic ways to do it. So how you can do it is you ask the community. Ask your supporters. A lot of times we see this really deep, Sam, and we go guessing like, what could we do? No, ask Sam. Ask Ohavia. Ask a lot of the people who buy from your business, who sow into your business. Ask the people who patron your business more than once, like, hey, are you seeing what's happening? You are? Okay. How would you like us to respond to this? One thing that's very impactful is the community has an answer for you and you don't have to look far. But how you can truly show them that you hear is asking them, creating that safe space, and then they will basically give you the blueprint on how to create content to accommodate a lot of the racial injustice that's happened in police brutality. So you can once again have an authentic answer to say, right? So, and I'm gonna keep it short, I promise. One thing that I also saw with this work I was doing was there were a lot of businesses who were out of brand when they responded a lot to what was happening. It was like, that seems forced. We're not asking for you to force it. Again, keep your color schemes, ask those who support your business, how would you like us to show up? Because that's allyship, that's partnership, and that's how we can do it better together. So I would say ask, have a community event, social media Q&A, and from there you can develop ways to show up on social media authentically to your brand and business.
Right, absolutely. And ask, and also like remember, it's like,
right.
This conversation may have already happened. It probably has, the question has probably already been asked, like be involved in your community from the beginning.
Yes, yes.
Be open to that conversation.
Absolutely. Oh, and you also raise a good point too, Sam, is also be open for a very uncomfortable answer. That's that's the part that a lot of times small businesses and like brands forget as well, is you're going to ask me and I'm going to tell you, like, and don't feel discouraged by that. Feel inspired, because now again, they're giving you a way to show up in the community that's authentic and true to your brand. But also again, you're acknowledging the people who give you their dollars. Like that's the highest form of respect. I give you my money and then you asking that you care. So just keeping those things in mind, and remember, please. So not a month goes by and you forget or you fall off. Please, like, touch base and see, okay, how do we do? Right. And how can we keep showing it authentically?
Right. Yeah. Be genuine. So
yes.
If you see something you want to film, how do you do so while respecting the privacy of individuals involved?
Absolutely. So, you're bringing me back to my news days, friend. So, okay. A few ways we could do this. So the first way is, Sam, can I record you like that? Really, because that really is what a lot of people don't realize, is that's actually a contract. And just using Sam as an example, say like I wanted to record this interview for Zoom, blase. Sam, do I have your permission to record? Now, Sam says no is no, right? Because what happens is if you put that content out, oh my goodness, all the legalities, I mean, you don't want the problem. So I would say go about it by asking. But when we talk, in my case, again, when I was at a lot of the demonstrations and protests, everybody was out there and all the phones were out. In that case, it's not so much so, can I, have your face or anything in it. I think more so just respect certain moments, right? So things that I wouldn't recommend are when you see officers talking off to the side and it's a group of them, respect that. Maybe they're coming up with ways. And what I saw at my particular protest was officers were trying to come up with ways to protect us and make sure like we were free to march down certain streets and all that. So respect that. Or if there's somebody crying, don't shove a camera in their face. If it's a highly emotional and intense situation, please don't be like, oh my gosh, do y'all see that? No, give them that space, because understand that this is not a moment on our phone. This is a movement that's ongoing, right? We just celebrated MLK Day. That was 1960. Okay, this is 2021, right? So you got to understand there are a lot of historic emotional ties that are high intensity, and I wouldn't recommend when there's a lot of emotion. So I would say ask is one, but also respecting the powers that be and also how they are deciding how to show up for us. And when it's a high intense situation, I've seen that sometimes shoving a camera in somebody's face makes it worse. So give that opportunity space to breathe. And if anything, take notes, right? If anything, like take pictures about what you saw, and later when it dies down, using your discretion and your integrity, do I want to share this? And how would this make me look? So and also ask people. I tell y'all, the power is in the asking. Like, hey, Sam, does this look inappropriate to you? Hey, Sam, like ask your circle, because there's nothing worse than publishing that content. It's there forever. And now we're seeing just like cancel so-and-so, don't support this business, don't support that brand, because we also saw that in 2020. So
Right. And also, like, I'll add to that, like, investigate why you want to film something.
Yeah. I mean,
Right. It's like, are you filming because you just want to show that you're there? You know, are you seeing something that you support? Like, what, you know, what's your intention with it? I think is important too.
oh, and I'm so glad that you brought that up. So in my case, I didn't even realize I was being filmed a lot until I got home, because again, that wasn't it for me. Meaning, like, I didn't go with the intent to do all the things that I did at those protests, honestly. And so when I got home, my phone was like going off, and I was like, oh, who took pictures of me? Right. So I love that Sam brought that up. It's asking, wait a minute now, am I here for the moment or the movement? And if I'm here to turn this moment on my phone into a movement, how do I plan to keep this conversation going? Because again, it's accountability. You got that on your phone. So I'm assuming that later on down the road, you're going to use that and like bring the conversation up again. Just things to think about. I'm your friendly neighborhood media person. I'm just trying to help.
Absolutely. And we have one more question. And I know we're going over time, but I just want to say, y'all, if you see someone doing something that is not, let's say, legal, perhaps,
Right.
don't film them.
You know, if it can put them away for overnight or a long time.
Right. It should not be illegal to march in the street and advocate for your rights.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And the police use those live streams. They use all of those photos against people.
Right.
You know, so if you want to film it, film the cops, you know, film the things that are like actually
Yes.
meant for people to
Yes.
you know, be seen.
Right.
Sorry, last question.
No, I love it. I love it. And also too, Sam, you bring up a good point, because that's how we're seeing how a lot of the people from the siege on the US Capitol are being identified, right? Phones. They're going through old streams.
Right.
And we think that when we cut that live off, that's it. No, there's over 100 people that like they on them. They got first, last names, and address. So
Right.
keep that in mind.
Yeah, don't be Elizabeth from Knoxville.
Elizabeth from Knoxville asking for a pardon. Yes, that is precise.
All right, last question here. How can we more effectively teach our children at home the importance of unlearning?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. So I'm the oldest of 5 siblings. My sister is 26, but my brothers are 21, 16, and 14. And I took the 21, 16, and 14-year-old with me to a lot of these movements and protests. Now, I didn't tell them they wanted to go with me, so I just want to put that out there. And so I remember coming home and I was like, how do you feel? And they needed a day or two. And I remember the 16-year-old coming back to me like, whoa, that was a lot. And so I think the best way to answer this, and also, you know, shout out to all the parents. I'm not a parent. I'm just a big sister, and I love youth. I pull up for youth here in Charlotte. So I'm going to answer this from like a big sister youth perspective. Shout out to the parents, though. What I found that works is just asking them how they feel and let them have that space to show you how they feel. Last week, we had a podcast with some Charlotte area youth about the siege on the US Capitol. And basically it was a Zoom and I just let the youth talk. I hardly said anything. I just moderated it to keep time. And when I tell you, Sam and friends, they spoke, and you'd be surprised what youth see. Because even if you protect them from like phones, there's still ways to get around that, and accept that and know that that's real. And if they want to know, they will. And instead of hiding the reality of what is from them, engage with them, ask, okay, what do you want to know and how is it? And when we discuss unlearning, it starts with the parent, starts with the big sister, because it had to happen to me. It started with having conversations with my mom and allowing them that space to say, I don't know, right? And for a lot of our parents, it's like, I held on to this my whole life. I don't know where to start. And that's okay. But let your child know that. Let them know that, and let them know, like, I don't know, but there's space to still be better and do better. So take it a day at a time. And again, I'm not a parent. Shout out to the parents. I mean, what a time to be a parent. And y'all are just my heroes, because I couldn't imagine. So I love you, parents. Whoa. But just create that safe space.
Oh, thank you so much, Ohavia. A true pleasure, per usual. And thanks to everyone who's joined us today. You know, we will put this video up on our YouTube channel, Advent Co-working Videos, where you can also view our F Up Level Up events. Yes, and our anniversary party. So definitely check it out. And also we have our next F Up Level Up event this coming Wednesday.
Yep.
And Ohavia's moderating it.
You see my happy dance?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to miss it. So, Ohavia, if folks want to learn more about you, get in touch, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely, friends. I am my name at Ohavia Phillips everywhere. And one thing about me is I drop heart emojis. So I will say this caution, I am extremely positive. I just need you to know what you're getting into. And I love people and community. So yes, I am at Ohavia Phillips on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all the things. And on YouTube, it's the O Show, where you can see how basically we make conversations like this live on the O Show, and we discuss community issues and put a positive spin to it. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, if you need positivity in your inbox in your life, connect with Ohavia. So thank you so much. Again, thanks everyone who's joined us today, and I hope you all have a great evening.
Oh yes. Thanks, y'all. Thanks, Sam.
Bye.